leaving the church and that initial time that I knew that I needed to be rebaptized, I didn't even know if I could be rebaptized. I just knew I needed to be numbered among the saints.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Saints Unscripted. I'm your host, David Snell, and I am here with Tyler Gordon, who has been on our channel before. If you have not seen Tyler's first episode that he did with us, after you watch this episode, go watch that one. We'll link it at the end, but it'll provide some good context for what we're going to talk about today. Tyler is the co-host of the From Grace to Grace podcast, which is a relatively new podcast, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Me and my co-host Sam, we started it a couple of months ago, and we've just been recording episodes. We talk about church subjects. So we've been going through the Plan of Salvation. We have two types of episodes, like a doctrinally based episode, like Plan of Salvation stuff, and then a more of a principle based episode of like how to deal with difficult conversations about the church and other things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Go check it out, guys. This is going to be an interesting episode because I've never interviewed someone on this topic before, but essentially, in a nutshell, you were born a member of the church. You ended up leaving the church. In what year was that?
I officially removed my records July 6th of 2018.
2018. And that we talk more about in your other episode.
Right.
So we're not going to get into that here as much. You came back in 2022.
Yep.
And now you've been working on getting your blessings restored.
Yes. So yeah, the last episode covered from coming back in 2022 until about June, July-ish of 2023. Actually, that episode released on 100 days before we could submit my paperwork to have my blessings restored. So that was like a milestone. So that's kind of the time period that we covered in the last episode.
So have they been restored as of today?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on November 16th of 2023, I had my blessings fully restored.
Okay.
So yeah.
So for those who are unfamiliar with what that even means, what does it mean to have your blessings restored?
Yeah. So you go through this process. So when you're rebaptized, you end up just having it depends on if you had been endowed before you left the church, which I had. You have one process. If you hadn't been endowed, there's another process. But because I had been endowed, you only are rebaptized. You don't get Aaronic priesthood or Melchizedek priesthood back. You don't have your temple blessings restored or anything like that. You're just baptized and confirmed a member, and
you get the basic package.
Yeah.
The copper package.
That's
Just
right.
kidding.
That's right.
Just kidding.
So you are rebaptized, and then the handbook says you have to wait 1 year before you can submit basically an application to the First Presidency to have your blessings restored, which means priesthood, endowment, any other sealing ordinances that were that weren't canceled before are restored as well. So that's kind of what I was looking forward to was getting back into the temple and being able to go to the temple and even do baptisms. So it was just an exciting time just to wait for that specifically.
I can imagine that this is probably not something that happens a lot in the church. I'm very unfamiliar with the process.
Yeah.
Where does one even begin if someone wanted to have their blessings restored?
That's a good question. I think the first thing is like talking obviously with Bishop Rick and stake president. They also have parts of an application that they have to fill out as part of this. So, kind of leading up to having my blessings restored, like I was doing all the things that I needed to. I was serving in callings. I'm in a YSA ward and stake, and so I was serving in callings and I was active. And so when the time came that we started to, I think this was October of last year. So I was rebaptized on November 5th of 2022. So the soonest that we could end up having my blessings restored or submitting the application was November 5th of 2023. And I had a countdown app on my phone to that specific day, to the hour of midnight. We had a whole party. We counted down the minutes, seconds.
That's fantastic.
It was great. It was awesome. So it was a really cool experience. But the process started in October of 2023, about a month before. My bishop sent me a link to the application, and it asks me like 3 specific questions. It's just on the church's website. You just get a link, you fill it out, you click submit. It goes to your bishop, who fills it out. They click submit. It goes to the stake president. They fill it out. They click submit. Goes off to some committee who then takes it to the First Presidency. So, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Past the stake president, I'm not really entirely sure the process. So, like, that's its own thing. But, it asked me questions of like, what's my testimony of Jesus Christ and the gospel and the church? And like, they ask about like serious sins that you've committed in that time. And so that's a little bit of a scary question, but that's kind of the process. A lot of it was just kind of sharing. What I did was not too long after that first episode released was I started writing a letter to the First Presidency to kind of encapsulate like my thoughts and my feelings. And it was very just kind of an emotional thing to do. So
why do you think it's so hard?
Well, so I think it comes down to like leaving the church. There's a lot of emotions involved in that. And so coming back to the church, there's also a lot of emotions involved in that as well. And so I think it's really hard because it's something that I really wanted. I wanted to enter into those covenants with my God again and to be connected to him in that way. And so those covenants were something really sacred to me, and having to wait a year honestly was probably the best thing for me because it made me appreciate it that much more. I would go to the temple. The beautiful thing about temples is a lot of them, not all of them, have waiting rooms, and the whole temple is dedicated, right? It's not like past the recommend desk is dedicated. So I'd go to the temple and I'd just sit in the waiting room. And honestly, sitting in that waiting room monthly, weekly, I gained a greater appreciation for that waiting period. It became a sacred time for me to go. So
gives new meaning to the word waiting room.
Yeah. So it was just something I wouldn't want to go back and do, but I appreciate the time because when we go to the temple, we typically go twice for ourselves, right? To be endowed and then to be sealed to our companion, and sometimes we'll go back for ourselves occasionally, but most of the time we're doing work for our deceased ancestors, and so for me to go to the temple and sit in the waiting room, I was going for myself. That whole year I was going just because I needed to go, and I wasn't doing any extra work or anything like that. And so it gave me a sacred time just to be with God in his temple. So
you got your application submitted.
Yep.
And then how long do you have to wait to hear back?
You don't know. So we submitted on November 6th. So November 6th, I met with my stake president. He finished up the paperwork and he clicked submit. And then I was kind of hoping that there'd be like confetti on the screen and like that kind of a thing, but there wasn't. It was just kind of, he showed me, he was like, look, it says submitted and now we wait. And so every single day I was like, okay, it could come today. It could come today. It could come today. And it didn't. And I was just, it was honestly, that was the hardest part. Waiting a year, not so hard because I had a countdown to exactly when the time would end of waiting. But this, I didn't know when we'd receive the answer. And so I ended up waiting until November 16th. I was walking out of work and I told my stake president to call me. As soon as he heard anything, call me. And so my phone started ringing. I pulled it out and it was my stake president, and I answered and he said, we got the answer and it's a yes. And I was so excited. And I said, okay, so when can we do this? And he said, tonight, if you want to. And so we got it set up and I went to the stake center and met my bishop was out of the town, so I had the first counselor, the Bishop Brick, come because we needed him there in order to do a temple recommend interview as well. So we did the restoration of blessings, which was just such a sacred and amazing experience to be able to be a part of. I had my mom there and just a couple of friends there, and it was amazing. And
Is it just a blessing format?
yeah, it's just a blessing format, and they restore your blessings, and it's just one of those things that you wait for a year for it, and then when it finally comes, it you just are so filled with the spirit. It was such a great experience. So, but yeah, then we did a temple recommend interview with my bishopric and then my stake president, and then that night we went to the Jordan River Temple, and I went in and I showed them a recommend, and they were like, looks good. And so went to the temple that night, and it was just really
Through an
um,
endowment session?
yeah, through an endowment session, and I it was so just I don't even know how to describe it, put it in words, but to be able to go into the celestial room and just sit there, like my heart was so full.
I'm interested in your thoughts on how going through for the first time
Yes.
before you left the church and went through the year of waiting and all these things,
Yeah.
how did that time compare to your first time after your blessings had been restored?
Night and day difference, to be honest. Like when I went through for the first time, I loved the church, but I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I almost like took the temple as like this is a right that I have, that like I'm 18 now and I can go through the temple because I deserve it. And that's not the case. It was going through right after I had my blessings restored. It was just a privilege to be able to just go into his holy house and to be able to participate in those sacred ordinances. And so you don't go through the temple like again, like a second time. You're just your blessings are restored and you go through. So I had a name of one of my ancestors that I took through, and you know it was just it was like I said, it was a privilege to be able to go through. So
And I bet that I mean some things have changed
yes.
in kind of the format of the endowment since you've been back.
Yep.
I bet that was a kind of a shocker.
Yeah, I mean, some people had mentioned like, "Oh, things are a little different," and so I was excited to see what had changed in my hiatus from the church, but to be able to come back and you know, leaving the church and that initial time that I knew that I needed to be rebaptized, I I didn't even know if I could be rebaptized. I just knew I needed to be numbered among the saints. And so whatever that looked like, I was willing to do. And so the fact that I could be rebaptized and even have my blessings fully restored, it was like, I mean, honestly, like I'm so blessed to be able to be here and to be numbered among the saints, yes, but also to be able to participate fully in the gospel. And I mean, that's what repentance is, right? Like we repent, and once we go through that process fully, he remembers it no more. And that's the process that I've gone through. And it's amazing to me.
You had about a 10-day wait,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Were you afraid or nervous that the answer was going to be sorry, but no,
Yeah.
or wait another year?
Yeah, so that's kind of why I wanted to come on here and talk about this, is because when I was going through the process, I looked for any information I could get about this process, and there just wasn't a lot. Some forum posts that were like, "Oh, we're waiting 3 years, we're waiting 5 years for this, and it's just not happening." People go through this process for multiple different reasons, and so people all have their different reasons why they're going through this, but it made me scared. It made me nervous that they would come back and say, "Yeah, well, maybe wait another year." And kind of in preparation for that, I needed to sit myself down and say like, "Okay, if they ask you to wait another year, can you do it? Could I wait another year?" And so I needed the faith enough to be able for them to say, "Yeah, no, you can have your blessings restored." But I also needed the faith enough in order for them to say, "Nope, you need to wait another year." And it made me think about the children of Israel wandering through the wilderness for 40 years. It made me think about Abraham and Sarah waiting for Isaac for so long, and I thought, you know, if they can wait for these blessings, for these miracles, so can I. So
Yeah. It makes me think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego
yes,
in the fiery furnace when
Yep.
they say, God can save us from this, but if not,
yeah.
we're still going to worship our God. So, oh man, that must have been a tense 10 days for you.
It was a lot, but like I said, once they said yes, it was like just this release of like, oh man, it was so exciting, just to be able to go and even to be able to have the priesthood back in my life, right? Like going to the temple is a big thing, but also the priesthood is an amazing thing to have back in my life as well. And I've had the priesthood around me, and it's blessed me in so many ways since I've been rebaptized, but to be able to be found worthy to hold that authority again has been a blessing as well.
So you came on here to kind of get some information out there
Yes.
about this process. If there are people out there that are watching that are kind of in the position that you were in several months ago or a year ago, looking to kind of have those blessings restored, or even just curious about the process, what else do they need to know? Is there anything else they need to know?
Just be patient. I mean, as hard as that is, right? We're all learning patience in a way, whether we're waiting for our blessings to be restored, or another blessing in our life to come. We're all learning patience, and so being patient and developing that faith enough for them to say no, and then being able to just be grateful for when they say yes. Reflect on all of the amazing blessings you've seen in your life, miracles, and write those down. The last time I came on here, I shared writing down your spiritual experiences is so important. It is what helps me keep perspective in my own life, and helps me maintain my testimony even in difficult times. And I'd say for people waiting or wanting to have their blessings restored, make sure you're keeping an account of those spiritual experiences so that when you're asked to share your testimony, you can point to this instance or that instance. So
I'm going to ask you to share your testimony now in a way.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you've been through so much the last several years now.
Right.
And now you're kind of, seems like you're kind of pushing through the last of it.
Right.
You know, you've come back, you've been rebaptized, you've had your blessings restored. It's been several months now.
Yeah.
Where are you at with your faith?
It's never been stronger. It's so interesting because every single day it seems like I start to get this like understanding of God or the atonement, and then he teaches me more. And it's a humbling thing because it's like, okay, I get to this point where like I understand something, and then it's like, oh, I don't understand it at all. There's more to it. And it's just such a humbling and just such a rewarding experience to be able to go through. I've found that my own testimony is founded less on the structure of the church and more on the atonement of Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ himself. I've found that as I've built that testimony, and even more than a testimony, as I've built that relationship with Jesus Christ, with God, it has blessed me in so many ways. Again, like I said, I learn more about God every day, but I also deepen my faith every day because of that. So, as we're recording this, I say my testimony's never been stronger, but it's going to be stronger tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. And I find that as I continue, that just seems to be true for me. So.
Love that. If people have questions for you,
Mm-hmm.
where can they go?
They can message me on Instagram. My handle is Tyler Kurt Gordon, Kurt with a K. And they could message me there. I think that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Great. Everyone watching, thank you for being here. Somewhere on the screen is the other episode that Tyler was in. Go watch that for more context for this conversation. Tyler, thank you for being here. Everyone, we'll see you next time.